Today on Locked On Canadiens, a new CBA has been ratified. We'll tell you what's in that new CBA and what we like and what we really don't like. We'll talk about how the Canadiens might be interested in Jordan Kyrou still, and that shouldn't stop them from collecting a number two center at some point because the Canadiens need more than just a number two center. And we'll take a peek over at the Metropolitan division and take a look at what's changed over the summer and how the Canadiens stack up against those cross-division rivals.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 1348 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports us here on the show and ensures you do not miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. You may have seen my work before at rabbithubs.com or the Build podcast. And I am joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. You might have seen her work at Habs Eyes on the Prize back in the day, and as a producer for Hockey Primetime. Laura, how are we feeling? Has the heat wave hit you guys as well as it is hitting me? It's quite warm where I am, and I really don't like it.
It's actually not so bad here, but it's on its way. It's on its way. Like the summer is really, it's been very chaotic, I would say.
Yeah, not a big fan of the summer heat, mostly because there's no hockey on TV to at least keep me satiated. So look, we have some news to talk about, some league-wide news. The NHL and the NHLPA have ratified their new collective bargaining agreement, giving us 4 years of labor peace and no lockouts, thank goodness. So we'll tell you what's in that CBA, what we can expect, what we like, what we really don't like, and everything that will impact the way that teams do business moving forward. I want to talk about how the Montreal Canadiens might still be interested in a top six winger like a Jordan Kyrou, and why fans are wrong to immediately jump to, well, they need a number two center. They shouldn't be acquiring that player. I'll tell you why I feel that way in the second segment. And we'll wrap up with some changes that have happened in the Metropolitan division. We covered the Atlantic in a previous episode. We'll tell you about what's happening in the other division, because Montreal may be fighting against those teams for a wild card spot come next spring. So let's start with the new CBA being ratified. It's still weird to me that we're able to get these things ratified without lockouts, because it seemed like under the old leadership, it just seemed like every time one of these came up, the threat of a lockout was looming, and this just hasn't had the same flavor. It seems more promising, no?
Yeah, and I honestly do think that if the pandemic hadn't happened, it wouldn't be this way. I think everybody just realized like how much revenue was lost and how much make good they all had to do, and like there's also a new TV deal which helps. I think nobody wanted to go through that again, and nobody wanted to have the just the league in question. So I do feel that if it hadn't been for COVID, we probably would have at least more contention, if not an entire lockout or strike or whatever.
Yeah, I also think new leadership coming in helps too. They're not under Donald Fehr anymore, who sat through a couple of lockouts with the National Hockey League, as well as one, I believe, when he was in charge of the Major League Baseball Players Association. So getting out from under that guy seems like the right move. But there's a lot of changes in the CBA. Some of them minor, or at least seemingly minor. Some of them pretty big. We'll start. I think the one that's in most headlines is the 84 game schedule is confirmed. The NHL's hope is that they will start the season in late September and have the cup awarded by June 21st, according to league sources through The Athletic's Chris Johnston and Pierre Lebrun. The 2 extra games being added in the regular season will be divisional games. Yay or nay on 84 games, Laura?
I'm a nay. I'm honestly like it just unless they get rid of the preseason entirely, I just think those are wasteful games. The season is long, 82 games already felt very long. And people are always complaining about the Stanley Cup going well into June. There's always complaints. It's usually from the hockey reporters. But I feel like it's a lot for the players. Like it's hard on their bodies. Like this sport is not a joke. So, I'm a nay, but you know what? It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, let me quell some of those fears too, because according to this piece by The Athletic, which was published back in late June, that kind of had the inside track on what was going to be in this CBA. They said that they will be shortening the days of training camp from 21 to 13 for professionals, 18 for rookies. So it's fewer days in training camp. One off day during the first week. Each team will be limited to 4 exhibition games, with players with 100 or more career NHL games being capped at 2 exhibition games. So the Nick Suzuki's, the Cole Caulfields, they get to play 2 preseason games. That's the max that they get to play. I like that aspect of this. Players don't really love the preseason. The fact that it goes on as long as it does is silly. I think if this is a decent compromise, and hey, look, both parties get to make more hockey-related revenue. That both of them get to play more games with fans that pay top dollar to come see them. It's more money in the bank. It's more money for everybody involved. The minimum salary will increase over the next few years. It's currently at $775. It'll go to $850 next year, $900 the following year, $950 the year after that, and $1 million in 2029-30. So your league minimum salary will make you a millionaire, which is pretty cool. That's pretty decent a raise there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know if you had anything to add there.
No, I was gonna say, like, we should always be on the side of the players, because players are the workers and we are workers, right?
Yeah,
we should never be siding with the owners. So anything that puts more money in their pockets is great.
The revolution starts at home, Laura. All right, salary retention limits. This one I hate. I hate this one entirely. Salary, and this is quoted directly from The Athletic. Salary retention will still be allowed in trades, but with an interesting tweak. A second retention on the same contract can only happen 75 regular season days after the first one, which nixes the use of a third-party broker in real time, as has been seen in numerous instances at recent trade deadlines. What are they solving for here, other than making it harder for players to go to teams where they will actually make an impact and not be stuck on, the Buffalo Sabres making good money but not doing anything with their talent?
I think this one is definitely owner driven for sure. Honestly, like, it's like, why am I paying for this guy that went to 2 different teams? It also tries to level the playing field, right? Like, you've got shrewd GMs that take advantage of it. Like, we've seen Kent Hughes kind of take advantage of it, right, in the past. So I feel like it's more about parity than anything else. And I think the owners are just like, I don't want to pay for this guy's salary, so I'm going to discourage salary retention from my GM.
I guess, but like, I think it's lame. I think it's, this, so much of what draws attention to sports leagues is player movement. It's trades, it's free agency, it's the draft, because both of those things happen there.
Mhm.
Like, I think that they are making the product less interesting by doing this.
Yes.
I also think that the wording in there is interesting, of 75 regular season days. Does this
Mhm.
mean, what does that mean for the off season? Those are not regular season days. Can we not do salary retained? Can we do multiple of them in the off season? Can we do 3-team trades in the off season, because it's the off season, it's not the regular season. So I think that's going to be an interesting wrinkle in this as we move on. There's a lot more in here. The last one that I kind of want to talk about is the salary cap for the playoffs. And this wasn't detailed exactly in this article, but allegedly they're trying to find, you can just call it the Vegas Golden Knights loophole, the Vegas Golden Knights rule, where they would have a player who was injured all year, and they would use that player's LTIR to get, to add players, to add talent, and then they'd get to the playoffs, and that player would suddenly make a recovery and be ready to go for game 1 of the playoffs.
It's a miracle.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that, like, these players are legitimately hurt when they're on LTIR. I think people think like Mark Stone is just making it up. I mean, Alex Pietrangelo just essentially ended his NHL career a few days ago.
He's hurt.
People were saying he was faking it the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, I find that to be silly, but I also think this is a wild overcorrection.
Yeah. Or like the Kucherov thing a few years ago.
Yeah, I just don't care, because it's not like fans act like their team can't do it. And they absolutely can. The Canadiens are going to do it this year with Carey Price's contract. Yes, Carey Price isn't coming back, but they're using that, that LTIR. They're using that space to bring somebody back. Every team does this to a certain extent. There are just some times where we look at it and we go, ew, I don't like the way that they did it, which I find silly. I find this whole argument to be pedantic and just stupid. And I think we've now have this very bad overcorrection back the other way, where essentially you are if you're a bubble team at the playoffs, like let's just use the Canadiens as an example. You're a bubble team at the playoffs and you lose Nick Suzuki and you know you'll get him back for the playoffs, but you have an opportunity to add somebody on his LTIR space. This new rule will not allow you to do that. If you add him, that means one of those guys won't be eligible for the playoffs. It means that we're saying, like, when you make the playoffs, on the day that you play your games, you will have to be cap compliant, which means like you can add somebody, but then you have to bench them in the playoffs. That's stupid. It's stupid. We should be telling teams that spend more to be better that you're doing a good thing. And instead, what we're doing is we're discouraging teams from being better. And what you're going to end up with is Major League Baseball, where you have a third of the league who tries and the rest of them are just out there collecting a paycheck. Like, I hate that mentality a lot.
Absolutely. I know we have to move on.
Yeah, let's move on. We'll talk about more about the CBA as the summer goes on. There will be more to discuss there, but we'll leave that there when we come back. We have to talk about the Canadiens' needs and how there's more than just 2C to be gained for Montreal. And I think we all need to reconcile with that and understand they're going to add more players on top of that. And we'll get into that in just a minute on Locked On Canadiens. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. For me, it's takeout, it's subscriptions, it's things, these unwanted costs that I don't know that are happening that get tacked on every month. They add up to a lot more than I expect. And Monarch Money allows me to have a better view over those and pick and choose which ones I want to get rid of. It's been very helpful in watching my spending and helping me build wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we are back. And I'm going to try not to come off as I'm ranting in this segment, but I have to put a line in the sand here.
It's okay to rant sometimes. It's perfectly okay.
I know, but at some point you risk people tuning it out because it happens too often. I think we've towed that line particularly well. But look, I think there's a lot of smoke to Jordan Kyrou and the Montreal Canadiens. The Canadiens seem to be interested, depending on who you ask. Montreal might be a team that Jordan Kyrou is okay lifting his no trade clause for, although you can kind of assume that's true given the fact that these rumors persist, even though his full no trade clause has kicked in, means to me that Montreal hasn't been told no. We mentioned that earlier this week. I know there were rumors that came out to talk about it, but that wasn't worth putting the hat on. So the hat's not coming on for that bit. The argument, the refrain that I see from fans constantly now is, well, they don't need a winger. Jordan Kyrou is a top 6 winger. Montreal doesn't need him. They need somebody who can play center on the second line. And I would like to remind everybody, you can need 2 things at once. You can need 2 things at the same time. This is the example I sort of came up with in my head and posted on Bluesky earlier. You're on a road trip and you're driving along the highway and the stops are few and far between. And you have a little bit of food left, but you have no water left. And so you pull over at the first gas station and you go in and they have food, but no water. You really need water. Water you have none of, but you have some food. Do you just leave there entirely and go, well, they don't have the thing I need most, so I'm leaving? No, you need food too. So why don't you grab some there? So long as it does not stop you from getting more water in the future, you're still fulfilling a need. That's the Canadiens right now. And these stops along the highway are off seasons. And right now, if there's no second line center available for them, or there's none at the price they're comfortable paying, balk, go to the next one. And that should not stop you from improving your situation now. Like Jordan Kyrou, he is not a perfect player. You will not hear that argument from anybody in the National Hockey League. This player wouldn't be available if he was a perfect player. He's making 8.125. That would be a steal for a player who's perfect. He's not. There are seldom perfect players in any sport. There's only one Shohei Ohtani. I've talked about baseball enough on the show. I think it's the summer getting into my brain. I just think that the Canadiens could use a top 6 winger who can score 30 goals, who has scored 30 goals several times over the past few years.
Yes.
And this mentality that because he is not a center who can play on the second line, it makes him entirely useless to the Canadiens, I find to be counterproductive to the entire exercise of team building. Laura, tell me I'm right or wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. There's just one thing that I think people are rightfully pointing out is that if they're going to go out and get Jordan Kyrou and get a number 2 center, people are worried about their return. So that, I think that's a legitimate concern. But sure. I agree with you in that they do need more than just a second line center. Like, you don't want a team that is capable of making the playoffs. You want a team that is capable of winning Stanley Cups, right?
Yes.
You want a team that people are scared of, right? Like, remember how like Tampa used to look like you couldn't beat them. Florida looks like you can't beat them. That's what you want. You don't want a team that, like, and again, Vegas, even the Washington Capitals, right? Like, there's going to be teams that spend years trying, and there's going to be teams that, like, they can do it right away, but they're not a perennial contender. That's not what I want. I want the Montreal Canadiens every year in the playoffs for everyone to say, I don't want to go through that.
Yeah. And look, the Canadiens last year, Laura, were 17th in the league in goal scoring. They had the 17th most goals scored in the National Hockey League. That puts them statistically in the bottom half of the league. Yeah. It's barely the bottom half, but that means there are 16 teams ahead of them who will score more goals than them.
Yes.
The return aspect of this,
and
go ahead.
We do have to say too, that is including the resurgence or the emergence of players like Lane Hudson, like Cole Caulfield finally hitting 37 goals or go above 30. Nick Suzuki finally becoming a more than a point per game player. Like, everyone had a great season, and they were still 17th in the league. So it is not enough. The depth here is not enough.
And look, they're adding Demidov. They hope they're adding back Kirby Dach. They hope they're adding back a full season or closer to it of Patrick Laine. So, like, there's reason to believe they'll naturally take that next step. However, there have been 2 preseasons now, or 2, early seasons now, where we have lost a critical member of the second line. And it has entirely derailed that line for the entire season. That line never recovered, regardless of who it was. In getting a guy like Kyrou, they insulate themselves from that one injury, taking that line out of contention. The return aspect of this is important, but I also find that a lot of people here are arguing in bad faith. Well, if they ask for Demidov or Suzuki or Caulfield or Slafkovsky, I agree with you. Kent Hughes is going to say no. Look me in the eye right now and tell me that Kent Hughes is going to trade any of those players for Jordan actual Kyrou. Stop. That's not true. That's not real. That is a boogeyman you have invented to teach yourself to be afraid of this trade. That is not something that is based in reality in any way, shape, or form. Now, would St. Louis ask for, like, a David Reinbacher? Yeah. I would bet they asked for David Reinbacher when they were trading Zachary Bolduc. And guess what? They didn't get him. And I would bet they're asking for Michael Hage. And guess what? They didn't get him. Kyrou's a different beast, admittedly. But I agree that if the ask is for those players, you tell them no and you move on.
Yeah. I don't
think there's any reasonable fear that they'll trade those guys.
No, there isn't. And the thing is, like, if you're St. Louis, you're not doing your job by not asking for those guys. You ask for the moon. And if you get, like, something somewhere between here and the moon, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. And remember, Kyrou had a no trade clause that kicked in on July 1st, a full no move clause. He cannot be traded to anyone without his approval. The Blues,
and he cannot be sent down.
He can't be sent down. He can't be waived. He can't be. The Blues have done themselves a disservice by waiting this long to move him because now the player is in control. The no trade clause is not, I'm not going to be traded. The no trade clause is you will only trade me where I want to be traded.
Yes.
And if all reports are to believe, and just generally just the internal logic of it all, the fact that these talks persist tells me that Kyrou has not said, I won't go to Montreal. He's probably said it's a team he'd be cool going to, because why else would they continue to have these conversations? So I want people to just understand that there is more to be had this summer than a 2C, and that a 2C might not happen, because look around. There are, I would say, like a third or more of the league is looking for a second line center, and nobody got one. Nobody got one. Nobody's moving them. They're not available. It's difficult to find them. That's not to say the Canadiens should stop trying or that they'll never get one, but right now is not the moment. The moment is for a guy like a Jordan Kyrou, a guy on a pretty, expensive deal now that will become very sweet, as the cap expands. But that's the market right now. And the Canadiens either need to decide, do we want to be a part of that market and make a move for a player like that and take our chances later on with a second line center? Or do we want to just balk at this and save our resources? Either are valuable options, but just dismissing this out of hand because, well, it's not a second line center. I find that to be just dismissive for the sake of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's very single-minded, like it's tunnel vision.
Yeah, one track mind, 1,000%. We try to have multiple tracks here. We need to do multiple things at once, and I would be willing to bet that Kent Hughes is having more than one conversation at this very moment. All right, we'll leave that conversation there. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the changes that occurred in the other Eastern Division, in the Metro, and figure out who the Canadiens might have a leg up on and who the Canadiens might need to challenge a little bit more next year. And we'll get into that in just a minute on Locked On Canadiens. All right. Before we get back into our regularly scheduled events, let's do our contest one more time. We're giving away some signed photos of Montreal Canadiens players. This one of Josh Anderson and this one of Arbor Xhekaj, looking rather, what did I say it was? Are you not entertained? That's sort of what Arbor Xhekaj looked like in this photo. We're giving them away as part of a YouTube subscriber giveaway. When we hit 4,500 subscribers on YouTube, we will give away the Josh Anderson photo. And when we hit 5,000, we will give away the Arbor Xhekaj. The way you enter, go to the comments on this video, write contest entry. Make sure you are subscribed to us. We will check when we do the drawing that you are subscribed to us. We will ask for proof of it. And when we hit 4,500, we'll do a drawing on the show. We'll send out the photo, and the same with the Arbor Xhekaj one at 5,000 subscribers. So thanks for subscribing. It helps us here a great deal. And we really appreciate it. We want to help our YouTube subscribers out a little bit by offering up a little bit of my own stuff. Come take my stuff away from me. I don't need it. All right, let's talk about the Metro, Laura. I kind of want to start with Carolina because I think they are the team in the Metro to me. They add
in a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways, they were last year, right? They were the team to come out of the Metro.
Yes.
They still can't get over that hump and get to a Stanley Cup final, but they added quite a bit. Two main players here. Nick Ehlers signs an 8-year deal, and they trade for and then re-sign Keandre Miller. I love both of those deals for Carolina. I'm furious that they got both of those players, and all we got was them stealing our logo for a baseball hat. And if you haven't seen that baseball hat, go look it up. It's just the Canadiens logo. But Laura, your thoughts on the Carolina Hurricanes this offseason?
I like what they did. I really do. I think they're a smart team. I think they're in danger of becoming one of those teams like the Washington Capitals that could get past the second round, or they couldn't get past the Penguins. Even the Colorado Avalanche, it took them a few tries to get past that second round, right? So they're kind of in danger of just becoming one of those teams that everybody just kind of dismisses. They eventually will get it right, I think. But what I'm not seeing from Carolina, honestly, I'm seeing a lot of smart moves, but what I'm not seeing from Carolina is a Florida-like quality.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't have that edge to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they have a lot of smart play, cerebral play, defensive play, right? I'm just not seeing a lot of what chaos and grit Florida brings.
Well, if you want chaos, they did just get Caden Primo. So Maybe there will be more chaos than we anticipate in Carolina. Look, I think they're still the class of the Metro,
Metro.
regardless
Yeah.
of any kind of deficiencies they might have against a team like Florida. I think that's just the team to beat coming out of that division. Let's move on. We'll go to Columbus next. I think this summer for Columbus, if you're a Jackets fan, it just feels like you have to be a little disappointed in how this is all rolled out. They made a
Yes.
big swing at Noah Dobson, and Montreal ended up getting him. They wanted to do a lot of stuff at the draft, weren't able to do much. They've made a lot of. They re-signed Ivan Provorov to a contract that most people just kind of scoffed at. It's not not a great contract. He signed until 2032 with a no move clause at 8.5 million, so not great.
No.
What else are your thoughts on Columbus this year?
Columbus could this is the thing. A lot of people were saying before the draft and free agency that Columbus was kind of like the Canadiens, where you're excited for this team, right? Like you're excited to see what they do. You think they have a bright future, and I feel like they haven't cratered it entirely or anything like that. I just feel like they've taken a couple of steps back instead of forward. And and again, I'm not saying like Noah Dobson just chose Montreal. That's just the way it is.
Sure.
Or the Islanders didn't want to trade to a division rival, or they wanted more from a division rival, or the return wasn't what they wanted. Whatever happened, it didn't work out. I just don't get the Provorov thing. I don't get, they didn't seem to have a direction with the moves that they made.
Yeah,
If
it
that makes
seems like
sense.
they just kept striking out,
Yeah.
and they didn't really. I mean, it seemed like they had a couple of plans, but when those didn't hit, they ran out of plans,
Yes.
which is unfortunate because that's a team that I think is going to progress naturally due to just their
Mhm.
younger players taking steps forward. I will bang this drum, forever. Kyrou is an incredible hockey player. Every time, down the stretch, we got to watch a lot of Columbus, fortunately and unfortunately, because we were white knuckling our way through those games. But
Yes.
Kyrou is worth the price of admission on his own. Like you should be watching this player. He could single-handedly get them into the playoffs next year, in the right conditions.
Yeah.
New Jersey. This is a team that I know personally you're rather confused by. I think you had mentioned on a previous episode that you're sort of
Yes.
like, I don't know what this team is. What is it about the Devils that's just sort of confusing to you?
Like, what is their identity? What is their style of play? Are they gritty? Are they fast? Are they grindy? Are they defensive? Do they play the trap? Are they, are they tough? I don't know if they're any of those things. They're
Yeah,
just there.
they seem like a version of Carolina in that they're just acquiring talented hockey players without like a cohesive theme to how they play. Carolina at
Yeah.
least has that cohesive theme, right? Like it's puck possession. We're going to shoot a million times at you. There's nothing you're going to be able to do about it.
Yeah.
Like I agree
And
with you
that's
with New
great.
Jersey. They don't have that identity that we like, growing up, like we knew the identity that they had.
They
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 were
can play
Marty
the trap.
Brodeur. They were Scott Stevens. They were going to beat the crap out of you and they weren't going to let you score. That was what they did. And it was boring and probably detrimental to the game of hockey, but it worked and it was what we knew that team for. I completely agree with you. I don't know what this team is other than, hey, look, Jack Hughes. Like that's really
Yeah.
that's kind of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, like the other thing too is that with New Jersey, they always seem to be underperforming
Yeah.
expectations.
Yeah, agreed. Next, I have the Islanders. I think what we'll do is we'll just redirect people to our episode with Gil. Go watch our
Yes.
crossover episode with Gil from Locked On Islanders. It's on this same podcast stream wherever you get your shows, whether it's YouTube or on your phone, wherever. Go find it there. You'll get our thoughts and Gil's thoughts on the Islanders, which are honestly more valuable than ours. Let's go to Manhattan and look at the Rangers. I think the Rangers are just doing a silent imploding.
I
They are
think
a very expensive, loud mess.
it's like you couldn't be this chaotic if you tried. Like if you were doing it on purpose. And the thing with the New York Rangers is that they're not doing it on purpose. Like they think they're doing something and they're doing something entirely different. They think they're
Right.
growing and building, and instead, like you said, they're imploding.
Yeah, I think all of this just points back to the fact that they gave Chris Drury way too much responsibility way too quickly, and he just can't do it. Um, not only can he not do it in a market like New York, I don't think he'd be able to pull this off anywhere. Like, just the way that he's going about building this team just seems completely antithetical to winning hockey games. And I have a really hard time understanding what on earth they're thinking.
Ownership wanted a yes man, though, I guess.
Yeah, and James Dolan absolutely got that yes man. So good on you, Jimmy. Go play with your band a little bit more. All right, we'll go to Philadelphia here, the new home of Christian Dvorak, who signs a 1-year, $5.4 million contract with the Flyers. Good for Devo. He was not getting that in Montreal, so glad he figured that out. The Flyers sort of, I think, stalled a little bit in their rebuild this last year. I mean, they ended up firing. John Tortorella basically said, I don't want to coach this team anymore. And then they said, your wish is granted. You're not coaching this team anymore. Any thoughts on the current state of the Flyers? Like, are you worried about them taking a step forward and maybe taking Montreal's place in the playoffs next year?
I don't know about that. I do think they are taking a step forward. First of all, the coaching situation was not ideal. Matvey Michkov obviously is going to be doing better, not under Tortorella. If those reasons are to be believed. They also went out and got Trevor Zegras, which I think they still want to be a top line center. I don't think that that's happening. But it's still an improvement. So I'm not too worried about them taking Montreal's place in the playoffs. The reason we wanted to do this, like this Metro kind of assessment, is just seeing, if the Montreal Canadiens are destined for a wild card spot, who's their competition. I would say that I'm still much more worried about Columbus than the Flyers, if we're gonna,
no question,
if we're worried about a threat.
Yeah, no question. I mean, last year the Jackets almost pulled it off. Behind some really incredible performances, like from Zach Werenski and the aforementioned Kirill Marchenko. Let's skip over Pittsburgh because I don't think there's much interesting there to say except one, they're rebuilding. Two, Crosby ? Like that's it. That's all we're going to be asking about with that team for the next few years. That leads us to our final team here, the Washington Capitals, the team that bounced Montreal in the first round. I don't see a team that got significantly better over the course of the summer. There aren't a ton of big moves here. Like, did Washington get better, or does it seem like they're kind of resting on their laurels a bit?
I think they're resting on their laurels, which is a little bit dangerous. I do think that they will likely be one of the playoff teams out of the Metro.
Sure.
I think that they were a little bit more of a paper tiger than people thought last year, right? And like, I do also want to remind everyone, yes, they won in 5 games and they physically pushed the Montreal Canadiens around, but then they couldn't hack it after that. So, against a really good team. So, when we were talking in our previous segment about how the Canadiens need more than a 2C, the Canadiens need a lot of depth because teams with depth and teams with talent beat teams like Washington 9 times out of 10, right? Montreal did not lose because they were physically overwhelmed. Montreal lost because of lack of depth and experience.
I mean, you look back at that playoff series, the Canadiens' first line and the first pair defensively ate the Capitals' lunch the entire series. They just didn't have anything else outside of that. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about in our second segment. You add a second line that can legitimately score anytime they're on the ice. And hey, look at that. You've built you are now a deeper team up front than you were against Washington. You can show, hey, we made a big improvement this year in that department. Who comes out of the East? Who comes out of the Metro next year into the Eastern Conference Final? Is it Carolina again?
Carolina.
Yeah.
Washington and Columbus.
Yeah, I think Carolina.
And then we get the 2 wild cards.
Yeah, I think the 2 things happen with Carolina next year. Either they get over the hump and we see them in the Cup final and maybe they win one, or we're at the end of the Rod Brindamore experiment in Carolina, because it's just now we gave you legitimate options and you still can't get it done. Like, we have to make a change at that point. So we'll see what happens. It's an interesting division. It's an interesting time to be a hockey fan just in general. So stay tuned and go check out those shows for more information on how their summers are going. Locked On every version of the Metropolitan division. All right, let's do our trivia. Before we do our trivia, we do have to give a quick another tip of the cap to our Jacques Face Punch, who actually did get yesterday's question right, but it came in after we were done recording, so we didn't give the proper shout out. So congratulations to you, Jacques Face Punch, for getting that one right. Yesterday's question was, Mike Matheson has been traded twice since he was drafted in 2012 and might be on the move again. How many players taken in the first round in 2012 are still playing for the team that they drafted, or are again playing for the team that drafted them? Because there's some interesting ones in here. Laura, do you have a guess to this?
So this is how I found out that Teuvo Teravainen was still in the NHL.
Yeah, that was the one that surprised me as well, and that he went back to Chicago.
Yeah, because I remember him getting traded to Colorado. I remember what a big deal it was. So he's one of them. I honestly, truly cannot remember who the other ones are.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because I think a lot of people got the three that haven't left: Morgan Riley in Toronto, Tom Wilson in Washington, and Andrei Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay. Andrei Vasilevsky, by the way, drafted with a pick from Detroit that they got for Kyle Quincy. So congrats on that move. That was awful. Anyway, so those three haven't left their teams. The one that most people got that came back was Teuvo Teravainen. However, this summer we had a second one in Radek Faksa, who is back in Dallas, and nobody had Radek Faksa. Now, he hasn't played again with Dallas, but he did sign another contract as a UFA. He's back in Dallas, so I don't think I could give anyone full credit for this one because Radek Faksa was not on their ballot. So Radek Faksa is back in Dallas. Every time you see them play, you will remember this, and you will curse his name just as often as I imagine his opponents do. All right. Today's question, we talked about the Canadiens being 17th in goal scoring last year. When was the last time the Habs led the league in regular season goals scored? When was the last time the Canadiens were at the top of the league in the GF category? If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below, and we'll shout you out on the next episode of the show. And that's going to do it for us on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you so much for tuning in and for making us your first listen of the day every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day, free and available wherever you get your podcast. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There's no off-season, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most. It's the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I was on Locked On NHL this week talking with our friend Gil about the Canadiens offseason, so go check that out and stick around for some of the other coverages of teams that we have there. You can find us posting things at Locked On Canadiens everywhere we post: Bluesky, Instagram, TikTok mostly. LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com for our email. Send us your mailbag questions. We'll do a mailbag this Friday and answer all of the questions that you guys have for us. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys tomorrow.